So this will be the first time I'm giving this particular talk, so it's something that we have newly developed recently. So it may run a little long and I may sound like I'm rambling. I'm trying to work out all of the bugs and kinks, so bear with me. All right, we all ready to get started? All right, let me start by a little introduction for the archives. The Mississippi Department of Archives and History was founded in 1902, which makes us the second oldest state-run archives in the nation. We are second to Alabama, who beat us by a single year, but we will return that on the football field. We have a mission here to collect, preserve the historical resources created by the citizens of this state and the agencies. By preserving those resources and sharing them with people around the world, we inspired the discovery of stories that try to connect and shape our lives and our future. So our goal here at the Department of Archives and History is to be a comprehensive agency that collects, preserves, and provides access to resources concerning the state's history, while we organize and prepare these resources for use by present and future generations. Now, I must say, this is something I like to tell everybody, we are not Big Brother, so we don't have a master file on everybody that ever lived in the state of Mississippi. You'll be surprised how many people come through the door. Y'all just don't want us to have this or that. No, if we have it, we want you to have access to it. That is our whole purpose here at the department. Whether it's as a site, whether it's a museum, whether it is this archive library, when we have something in our holdings, we really want to get that in your hands to let you review it, to see it, to touch it, to experience it. Okay, so we just keep in mind that we are just simple stewards of the records that we have. So the main research facility is located right here in the capital city of Jackson. We're at 200 North Street. This facility is open on Mondays from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., Tuesday through Friday, 8 to 5, and most Saturdays we are open from 8 to 1. The Saturday schedule is affected by whatever is planned within the city that may affect access to our building. Usually we are here every Saturday, but they're like the Christmas parade and sometimes the Dixie National thing that's going on. Sometimes if that parade comes around our building or cuts off access, then we may close, but usually we try to keep the Saturdays open. So upon your first visit to archives, you will need to obtain a researcher's card. You will be asked to fill out and sign one of our application forms and present a current form of identification. Then you will be issued one of our researcher's cards free of charge for the first time. Please be careful to read the entire form front and back, as we have rules listed for the use of our facility on it. Once you obtain your card, you'll enter into the library facility, where there are 3 rooms available to you: the public reading room, the archival reading room, and the media reading room. The first of the 3 rooms is the public reading room. It is the largest of the 3, and in that area we have a large number of books covering a variety of topics. We have published genealogies, census index books, cemetery indexes, and some periodicals. So when you first enter the library, you'll stop at the central desk and sign in, and the staff person there will help get you started. The media reading room is where our microfilm holdings. We have over 42,000 rolls of microfilm, microfiche, and digital-born archival materials there. The microfilm, everything in that room covers a wide variety of record types, such as military records, census, county records, state government, so on and so forth. You will also find our newspaper holdings on microfilm there as well. The archival reading room is where our most one-of-a-kind, our rare items, things that are hard to replace or are irreplaceable, will be viewed. That would be your hard copy original manuscripts, maps, books, photographs, government records, and so forth. And those are just a few examples of the types of records we have within our holdings. All right, so most often when someone mentions a death record, they are thinking of a death certificate. And today, most of us have no recollection of a time when an actual death certificate did not exist. And we'll get into the dating of Mississippi death certificates a little bit further on. But now a death record is just that. It is a document or a report detailing a person's death. It is most definitely a death certificate, but it could also be an obituary, a cemetery index, a hospital patient register that includes cause and dates of death, a sexton's report, which is sexton is a person who takes care of a cemetery, any incarnation of a coroner's report, your family Bible, even a personal letter written from one person to another can be considered as a death record if it discusses a person's death, when they died, what they died from, where they were buried, surviving relatives. Any combination of that information included in some type of document is what I would consider to be a death record. Now, I will concede that excuse me. I will concede that such information coming from some type of agency holds more credence, but in the realm of genealogy, sometimes we have to take whatever we can dig up. So the information contained in a death record is of the highest importance to the genealogist, no matter if you're a novice or a professional, because the death record is the final bookend of a person's life. So between the date of birth and the date of death is where you expect to find or search for records or information about a particular person. No one will show up on a census record before their birth. No one should show up on a census record after their death. They can't get married. They can't purchase property. They're not supposed to hold political office. You know how that is. So the death record is the final piece of documentation in the genealogist's book of tricks. So in general, the death record can provide medical history through their cause of death. If it was some sort of health or medical issue, it can provide information on a next of kin, parents, siblings, a spouse, children, their profession, and even their last known residence. Now, you may be wondering, after that soul-stirring introduction, what type of death records does the State Archives have? Well, I am glad you asked. And that is the focus of this presentation today. So to give you an overview of what death records we have access to either in microform, online, or in hard copy here at Archives. Just for starters, we have death certificates, newspapers for obituaries, the U.S. Federal Census mortality schedules, military grave registrations, cemetery indexes. We have some funeral home records, and then we have online access to Find a Grave and the Social Security Death Index. We will discuss each of these, and some we'll discuss more in depth than others, but we hope to give you a sense of what to expect from each of these types of records and demonstrate how they can be helpful to you in your genealogical search. So let's start with the most sought after death record, the death certificate itself. So while preparing for this presentation, I ran across a Wikipedia page, and let me say that I am not saying that Wiki is a viable, reliable primary source. We know it's open source and anybody can add anything, but it can be helpful. And I did find something surprising on Wikipedia that they claim Mississippi death records date back to a law passed in 1879. This, you can probably imagine, led me down a nice rabbit hole. But they were not entirely wrong. See, in 1878, after the 1878 legislative session, the legislature began holding sessions every 2 years rather than every year. So there are no House or Senate journals or even Book of Laws for 1879. However, there was an effort to create some boards of health within municipalities that started in 1879. Some of these boards of health appear to have been created to combat the spread of yellow fever and other communicable or infectious diseases and raise sanitation efforts. However, Places like Vicksburg took things a bit further and included registering of births and deaths in their ordinances to secure public health in 1879. And this is the posting from the Vicksburg Daily Herald, Tuesday, May 20th, 1879. Where's that pointer thing? And you see over here in this section, they listed the entirety of the public health ordinance to secure public health. Say that 3 times fast. In Article 3, Section 7 of Vicksburg's ordinance, it requires the city health officer to establish a register of deaths within the city. Now, Section 8 requires births to be reported to the city clerk within 1 week of the child being born. Now, this was not a very comprehensive effort. As you can see, it was an ordinance of the city of Vicksburg and not the county or the state. So the births and deaths that were registered by the Vicksburg health officer were strictly for the city of Vicksburg. That being said, the official start date of statewide death certificates began with Chapter 149, Laws of 1912, where the Department of Health and the Division of Vital Statistics were established. And 2 of their core mandates was the registering and recording of births and deaths. There are 24 items that were to be included in a death certificate. Here at the archives, we have the death certificate index on microfilm and microfiche. The index is also available online at ancestry.com, familysearch.org, and archive.com, archive.org, excuse me. If you go to Reclaim the Records, it will direct you to the holdings of archive.org. Now, the death certificates themselves were originally to have, again, I said there were 24 different items they were supposed to have. It is the place of death, county, address, whether it was a hospital or whatever the circumstance was, even if they died at home, you're supposed to record that information there. Of course, their name, their residence, whether it was in the county, in the city, if they just have a residence of whatever state, if they were from some other state and died in the state of Mississippi, their gender, their race or color, whether they were single, married, or widowed, divorced, and there is a slot for that person's spouse's name, their date of birth, of course. They asked for age in years, months, and days. Sometimes that is filled in. Sometimes you are just lucky enough to get a year as far as age. Their trade or profession, the industry in which they worked in, date the deceased last worked at their occupation. There's a lot of information that should have been included, but we don't always see filled in. Total time years spent on their occupation, birthplace for that person, whether town, city, or state. There was a slot for parents' names, the father as well as the mother, and the birthplace of the parents. There's a slot for that as well. Let's see, the information for the parent's address, whether this person, the decedent, was buried, cremated, or removed to another place, the undertaker, and a slot for the person signing for the medical information. Now, that's items 1 through 20, which you can expect to see on the first page of a death certificate. What we normally have on the second page of a death certificate would be items 21 through 24, which includes another date of death, and this is usually filled out by a medical professional, because number 22 says, I hereby certify that I attended the deceased from, and give a date from the time period. If it was a lengthy sickness that wound up in death or what have you, there is information there. That information could be included there. They have a spot for contributory causes. There is a place for cause of death on the front page, But if there is an extenuating contributory circumstance, that usually appears on the second page. They're supposed to also have on there if the death was due to external causes such as violence, whether it was an accident, suicide, homicide, the date of that injury, whether or not there was an autopsy or a investigation. And lastly, number 24 was disease or injury in any way related to the occupation of the deceased. So from those 24 items, the death certificate can have a significant impact on your genealogical journey. Yes, sir.
If I can. Those specific questions related to the cause of death, would you typically see that completed by the attending physician or medical professional, or is that section filled out by some county or city medical official?
It's supposed to be filled out by whoever attended the person at the time of death. They're supposed to submit that application to the state so that the state can create the death certificate from there. Gotcha. But now, I will say this. 9 times out of 10, that something is in that section for cause of death. The second page is what is a roll of the dice. You don't always have a second page, but I encourage you to always look for a second page, and we'll get to that in just a minute. All right. Let me find where I am. The death certificates themselves are on microfiche. On microfiche. And when searching for the death certificates, it is important to note the year as well as the certificate number, because the numbering starts over every year. So if you're looking for certificate number 235, you need your year, because from 1912 up to 1943, there will be a certificate number 235. There's 43 years of searching. So we need to know the year as well as the number. It makes it a whole lot easier in order to find the certificate that you're looking for. The indexes are arranged by year and will have the person's name, their race, their gender, the county where the death certificate was issued, and the certificate number. Now, if by chance you are unable to locate the certificate number within the index, or if there's some type of error, we can pull the certificate packets by the year, the county, and the month of someone's death. This is kind of risky because they could have died in a different county than which they live. So be mindful that there are a few errors on the indexes, and some people, we have found over the years that some people have been missed on the actual index. So this is the 3 images we have here are typical layout of what you should expect to see for the death certificates. On your far left, this index is alphabetized traditionally by the last name. Let me see if I can get this point. Alphabetized traditionally by the last name in the far left corner side. This would be the given name, somewhat alphabetical within the time period or the space for the surname. And I'm sure you can't see this very well, but right here next to the person's given name, that would be the county in which the person died. This little squiggly in here that's hard to see on the slide, that would be their race. It's going to be a C for colored or a W for white. Then you have the certificate number, and then the little 2-digit number here, that would be the year. Now, this example is for 1912 up to 1924. These other 2 go back and forth between for the years from 25 up to 43. Bless you. You're welcome. You'll have an alphabetical listing of the surname, a somewhat alphabetical listing of the given names. Then you have a middle initial if it is provided. This would be the county in which the person died. Then we have their gender, whether 1 is for male, 2 is for female. Their race, which would be 1 for white, 2 for black. And here we have the month. And then this is the county code for where the death certificate was issued. You also have the death certificate number here. Now, this one that's in this carbon copy black over here, these are arranged by the Soundex code. And some of you may be familiar with the Soundex code is a 4-character code that's established by the way the name sounds rather than by the way the name is actually spelled. So if you have one of those names that could be spelled any number of kind of ways, I just helped a lady yesterday. Her great-grandfather's last name was Hurd. So we looked for H-E-A-R-D, H-E-R-D, H-U-R-D, found him under H-U-I-R-D. I ain't never seen Hurd spelled with an I. But the best thing about that is we were able to use the Soundex code. Now, it gives you a 4-character code. The first letter of the last name is always the first character of that code. And every letter thereafter is given a number up to 4 characters. So it doesn't matter how short or how long the name is, it's always going to have 4 characters in that code. And it really eliminates bad handwriting and people who couldn't spell or didn't take time to ask you, hey, how do you spell your name? Still, for this, you're going to have your county code here. The 1s and 2s would be for either race and or gender. And then you have your certificate numbers there. Any questions on these so far?
Where do you find these?
These will be on microfilm. Now, we can find, they are on Ancestry. Let me warn you about Ancestry. They did not take the time to clean up the images that they have. So when you get into the 30s for those death certificate indexes, you see where that black is over there? It'd be straight black. So, but we have these indexes on microfilm for the ones that you cannot read on Ancestry, and we have scanners that are in our media room where we can actually do a little digital manipulating of the images to bring out. We have brought out quite a few of those that in times past we couldn't determine.
So these 3, they are the same thing but different. Are they from different time period or from different county?
They're from different years. Now, 12 to 24 is going to be the one that's on your far left. That's traditionally alphabetized. The one in the middle, I just took an example of 1928. And the one on the far right, don't make me lie to you, I don't remember which year that was, but I was scrolling through those carbon copies and chose one that would kind of show what you're up against when you pull those. But yeah, now I think 42 and 43 are going to be more like this. 12 to 24 this would be 12 to 24, and there's a combination between these two from those between 25 up to 40.
And how current or accessible?
Up to 43.
To 43. Okay.
We have from 1912, November of 1912,
Okay.
up to 1943. We're working with Department of Health to hopefully get some more. Cross your fingers, but don't hold your breath.
William, I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
So you say C for color, W for white. What, of course, those are 2 most common races in Mississippi, but what about Native American or somebody who's from a different race, like Asian? Are they identified in that?
Sometimes you'll see an M for mulatto. I've seen a couple of I's for Indian,
Okay.
but usually they're either C or W.
Okay, so
Rarely will you see those M's and I's.
and that so Indian could get
Be under C.
or W. Would they be? No, they probably
Typically not. For those who have come in contact with doing this research, if they are saying, well, we're trying to determine our Native American ancestry, they mostly find their relatives listed under the C.
Okay, that's good to know.
And you may get to this, but before 1912,
We're going to get to that. Just to answer your question, the official start date of statewide death certificates is November of 1912. Now, remember I told you that there were some municipalities that started in 1879. Well, that was not statewide. It was not comprehensive. And there are only a few. I mean, you think about, we've got 82 counties. We're talking about Vicksburg, Natchez, Jackson, and a couple on the coast. Out of all of the cities we got across this state, even in 1912, Those few were the ones that actually started to keep these registers, and some of the registers actually did survive. I'll get to that in my municipal records section somewhere down the line. All right. I think I know where I'm at. All right, so let's get into the most sought after record, the death certificate itself. Now, again, be sure to look at the pages immediately to the right of your certificate when you find it, because there could be a second and even possibly a third page of information for that individual. Most certificates will have just the one page. There are some instances where a second page is provided due to cause of death or some other circumstance. And in very rare instances, you will have a third page for that person. So this is, let's go to that next one. Now this is interesting. And I'll show you this person's certificate again. This is DC-1A, DC-1 for us. The very first death certificate that should have been officially issued in 1912 belongs to Miss Mary Bates, and you see her full name here. She died in Adams County. She was living in the city of Natchez. It gives you an idea of what street she lived on. So this is pretty well filled out, and you can see her cause of death here. This is the information that should have been filled out by the medical professional, whoever may have attended. The informant here, I'm not sure, I think that's Junior Bates, but the person who filled that out was in a hurry. The information we always want to have filled in on a death certificate is right here. When we don't know the parents, we find the person's death certificate, and hopefully the parents' information is there. Her father's name is here, but whomever the informant was did not know her mother's name. So what would you do in that situation? You take the father's name and you go back to see, she was born in 1889. I would go back to the 1900 census, look for Henry Johnson, and hopefully the mother is listed there as well. Hopefully she didn't die before that 1900 census. See, that's how you take that information and use it to further taking your research backwards.
Okay, explain to them why they would look in the 1900 census instead of the 1890 census.
Thank you, Joe. The 1890 census was burned in the 30s in a fire at the Census Bureau office. And the portions of that census year that survived were so badly damaged by the smoke, by the fire, as well as the water used to extinguish it, that they decided to just destroy it. There is I think a Confederate and Union soldiers portion that actually did not burn. That somewhat survived, but they decided to just toss everything as far as the census records themselves. So we do not have access to the 1890 census, which most of us are looking for, because that would be like a connector. But unfortunately, that is not available to us. That's why I said go to the 1900 census, because she should be there with her parents as a child in the household. Okay.
So is the file number what indicate that this is the first?
Yes, ma'am. In that upper right-hand corner, this is where you should expect to find that person's death certificate number. So, and the year is going to be here, but the number is going to be up here.
May I ask?
Yes.
What is her name again? Mary?
Mary Bates, B-A-T-E-S.
Okay, and so she was colored
Mm-hmm.
in Jeff.
So you have her name here, gender, race. This is the married, widowed, or deceased or divorced. Her date of birth, her age in years, months, and days. Her occupation, where she was born, and then this is the parental information here. Cause of death is supposed to be over here, and the attending physician or medical professional here. She is buried in Natchez. Unfortunately, it didn't tell you which cemetery in Natchez, but at least it narrows it down, and it gives you also the undertaker's name there.
And that's the very first. death record?
Supposed to be.
Wow.
She was. Looks like she was in her 20s.
Yeah.
Now, somehow, and I'm still looking for information on how, Mr. Starling here, became death certificate 1A. He died in 1908. I don't think he's even on the certificate index. Here's another funny thing, and I'll show it to you in a little bit. They didn't put this out until the 30s. Right. When I tell you, they do some strange things. Yeah, well, they didn't dig him up. Okay, so again, make sure you look for, the reason I have him in here is because I wanted to make sure I emphasize to always look for a second page. When I saw, in my mind, I'm like, okay, I want to give them an image of the very first death certificate ever issued. But then I saw this dude had death certificate 1A, and I'm like, why does he have 1A? Well, that's where the second page comes in. This is a statement that he died in 1908, and this was not filed until 1931. And I'm not sure who this person is. That may be another talk for another day. But this is an affidavit that was filed with the death certificate because they went back and said that this man was sold a coffin. Go figure.
I told you they found his body.
You might be that.
Telling you.
I don't want to find him
I don't blame you.
almost 30 years later. Look, if you're in the woods in Mississippi for 30 years, if you ain't got breath in your lungs, baby, ain't much left of you. But they did say that somebody sold him a coffin, a casket in 1908, and that's why they went back and gave him 1A. There is another story behind that, but again, that'd be for another day. Now, this is a very rare for me because I've been here for 24 years. This is the one time that I've seen someone with 3 pages to their death certificate. Now, I'm used to having 2 pages because usually that second page gives you more information about the cause of death, whether it was some type of communicable disease or whether it was a murder or homicide or what have you. And I can't tell you how many times we've seen on the main death certificate it said died by gunshot, and the next one shot dead by somebody. Well, thank you. We know he was shot dead. We kind of found that out because he said he died of a gunshot. The other day I found one that said that the gentleman had been out hunting and he came home and laid his shotgun down in the corner. Something happened and the shotgun shifted and shot him. He was shot dead in his own house. There was no other investigation because he was the only one in the house. His wife came home and found it. So there is good information on those second and third pages. So always, always, always look to the immediate right of that death certificate for another page, just in case there is one. Don't be disappointed if it's not, but just in case. Okay, on to obituaries. There are 2 types of obituaries I like to use. The funerary obituary created by the family for the actual funeral, and the newspaper obituary, which today is usually submitted to the newspaper by the funeral home. I have not seen too many funerary obituaries here in our holdings. Most of the ones that I have seen have been added to someone's private manuscript collection. There has not been a concerted effort to collect these. And I think that would be kind of difficult given that most of us consider the funerary obituary like a keepsake. We're not turning that loose for nothing. We got a death grip on those things. So during your genealogical search, I would suggest that you take the opportunity to ask family members if they have any, and if they're willing to either share them with you or at least allow you to copy it. These are subject to whomever was tasked with pulling the information together, so take them with a grain of salt. They don't always have all of the details we're hoping for, but they often provide the date of birth, the date of death, names of siblings, parents, sometimes grandparents, children, grandchildren, a place where the deceased person was born, where they lived, where they're buried. And unlike the newspaper obit, the funerary obit reads more like is more likely to have deceased family members mentioned as well. So in my opinion, the funerary obituary is oftentimes more helpful than the newspaper obit because of the amount of information that could be listed there. And it is often written more like a journal of that person's life. However, it is the newspaper obit that which MDAH can possibly give you access through our microfilm newspaper holdings, and access to the online resources of Chronicling America and newspapers.com. Chronicling America is through the Library of Congress. Newspapers.com is tied in with Ancestry, so you will pay through the nose for that subscription. Before you go deep diving in that, come here and use our entry port to that. It may save you a few dollars.
Some of the libraries have free access to Ancestry too. I know the one in Madison County does.
Yes, ma'am. And it's probably an institution account, and that gives us a little more access to what they have versus them making you pay for tiered services. One lady told me that her service had went up to over $100. That's why she canceled it.
It is. I can't
Yikes.
because even when they give you 50%, like they have a sale now, but it's still over $100.
And they don't last long, do it?
They got 6 months.
Save you some dollars? Come visit me. That's right. Okay, so newspaper obits are great items to have if you can find one. It confirms someone's approximate date of death. It should only be posted after their death. If the paper is a daily, it can be posted anywhere up to 2 weeks after the date of death. If the paper is a weekly, it could be up to 3 weeks after death. So, and again, if you can find one at all, because there's no guarantee that a newspaper will post an obituary. And most of them, even today, require payment for that obit to be posted. Now, here is the 1875 Daily Clarion notice. They were charging $1 for a 10-line obituary, but a death notice of less than 6 lines, or a marriage notice, they posted for free of charge. Now, this is interesting to me because during that time, you could purchase a newspaper for only 10 cents. Buy a paper for 10 cents. You want something in the paper, you got to pay $1. Thankfully, we now have something like this in the Clarion Ledger. So newspapers today have a dedicated section for death notices for the most part. Now, you do have some smaller market newspapers like Madison County and Lee County, places like that, where they still do not have a dedicated section, but they still post the obituaries from time to time.
But like today, like say the Clarion Ledger, don't you have to pay for that loan? It's just a
Yes,
death notice, but the family has to pay to get that.
You do. And I don't know what the rate is.
But years ago, it was
Yikes.
free, so I found a lot.
And even today, you can still find quite a bit. So I would suggest finding the date of death first, as much of a date as you possibly can before going looking for an obituary. As a rule of thumb, I start with the date of death and search at least a week or two after that. You should also consider if the newspaper is a daily, a weekly, or bi-weekly print for how long after the date of death you should search. At the very least, the information listed is often limited to the person's name, maybe their spouse's name, and possibly when their service will be. I have seen them include a great amount of information, such as cause of death, actual date of death, parents' names, children, siblings, and of course a spouse, all depending upon who the deceased was survived by, and even at times their occupation. Most newspapers charge a fee for the obituaries to be printed, and you can imagine some could afford it and some could not. And also, there is the racial divide to consider. There are several newspapers that would not print obits for African Americans in the late 1800s, and this continued somewhere in the 50s, 60s, or 70s, where that trend started to kind of dissipate a little bit. And of course, every newspaper is different, and their policy changed with the editor of the newspaper. So when searching for obits, also be careful to look for a card of thanks. Sometimes cards of thanks are maybe like 2-3 lines. That would be what was free for them to post, so that they, if it's not a death notice, it's not an obituary, but the family thanked the community for their outpouring of sympathy during that time. Now,
You can get family names that way, like names of siblings, names of, that you might not find in an obituary through the card of thanks.
sometimes, now usually there's only one person listed on the card of thanks, and it's usually whomever posted it is probably the wife, or if one of the older children were handling the arrangements, whoever had it posted, their name would be included in there so that you would know who posted it at least. So Clarion Ledger actually put in information as to what they require for obituaries, to their obituary policy. So you may want to also pay attention to that. I do not know what the current rate is, but again, some people have them, some people don't. If you do not find an obituary, it's just another day at the office, actually.
If you know the funeral homes these days, some of the, I know the African-American funeral homes will have either, some of them have a long obituary, some of them have short.
Mhm.
Usually it's the date of birth, it's the parents,
Mhm.
at least.
Mhm.
They list.
Let's move on to the mortality schedule. Now, this is a rarely used death record, and the federal census really has given us a gem in this record. It's kind of a predecessor to the death certificate. So we have mortality schedules for 1850, 60, 1870, and 1880. There was supposed to have been one for 1885, but I think that one did not survive from the Census Bureau itself. So the mortality schedule gives us a listing of individuals who died within the year leading up to when a census was to be recorded. So it does not cover from, let's say, 1849 to 1850, does not cover the 10-year time span that the federal census would have covered. It only covers from about, I think, November, December of the previous year up to about maybe June 1st of the year that the census was recorded. It is very limited in its scope, and it is not very comprehensive because it does not cover that entire 10-year time span. It only covers the individuals who died within that year leading up to the recording. Now, we have index books for the mortality schedules in our library, and there's a note in there from the publisher. The people who compile these index books, they claim the census takers missed approximately 20% of the deaths for the year that they were supposed to be recorded. Now, I don't know how they came up with that number, so but this tells us that this resource is, although it's great to have when you're up against a wall, and it can be helpful if you find someone in it, but it's not comprehensive at all, and it is more limited than any other thing that we have. But when you're up against a wall, this is another item that you may want to check. The mortality schedules are supposed to include information such as the person's name, their age, their marital status, their cause of death, their occupation, race, month of death, and oftentimes it will list where the person was born. Now, the actual records themselves are on microfilm just like the census records are, but the indexes are in book form in the public reading room on the wall just outside of the media room. Now you'll notice you have a alphabetical list of the surname, Then you have a somewhat alphabetical list of the given name. This is the county in which they died in. And here is their ages, male or female, the month of death, and this is, I think is listed as nativity. This is supposedly the state in which the person was born. Also here, this is the cause of death. On this last column, this is supposed to be an occupation column. There is up to a 3-digit code, and I think there's, excuse me, over 200 different items listed. The index, the ledger for that is in the front of those index books to tell you what those codes are. Most of the times in the indexes, you will not see those codes. For some reason, whoever compiled the books did not list them. But on the actual mortality schedule pages, you should see those codes there. Yes, ma'am.
Dropsy.
If you hadn't asked me, I'd
Well, it's telling you cause of death, and I'm just,
Yeah,
more than one, and I'm.
I remember hearing that, but I don't remember
Okay.
what it is.
Okay, thank
Um,
you. Something to look, for me to look up when I get home.
Yeah, me too. Because like I said, I remember hearing it. I've known people to have it, but I don't remember what
Okay.
it is. Now, I'm glad you mentioned that, because now there are several terms. Remember, we're looking at records that are old. Okay, so there will be some medical terms of causes of death on the death certificates that you may not be familiar with, and I would advise you to go back and look it up, because some of it is just a term that has not been used, and they're using a different term for it. Like a lot of us don't know what pellagra is, because we don't have anyone to die from pellagra anymore. But pellagra, if I'm pronouncing it correct, excuse me if I'm not, was a vitamin deficiency. As a matter of fact, the gentleman for who the state hospital is named for was a leading scientist for pellagra, to figure out why were people dying from pellagra, and he came up with feed them corn. The simplest of things. They were feed them corn. It was a mineral substance that was a deficiency within the body that was so bad that it was killing people. But once you start feeding people vegetables and improve their dietary conditions, pellagra started to go away.
William, your darling wife, looked it up, and
She would.
of course she would. And dropsy is an older term for edema.
Edema, it says it's a swelling under the skin.
I knew dropsy was an older term. I just
Yeah, I remember from when I was a kid, but I just didn't remember what it was.
Yeah.
So that's like a blood
Instead of
clot?
swelling under the skin, it fills with fluid.
Mm.
There you go, heart failure.
So my husband has dropsy.
I'll tell him that.
Don't you send Harry after me. All right, so yeah, so just be careful of those items, and like anything that you aren't familiar with, I always look it up. Okay. This is what the actual mortality schedule page kind of looks like. Of course, unfortunately, it is in handwriting, so you may have to take some time to look through it in order to familiarize yourself with how that person writes in order to decipher their handwriting. So now, when it comes to indicating race, do I have to go back? Yeah. When it comes to indicating race, there is an occupation code for slaves, which is 144. Otherwise, race is not really indicated in the index. And that's the 1860. You notice that they do not have a W or a C or an I or anything like that. The indication of race does improve with the 1870 and 1880, but 1850 and 1860, it's something you don't always see. Where was I? So the actual schedule pages will use a B for black, W for white, M for mulatto, and what I'm seeing looks like a Y for, and I think that's either going to be yellow, but there is not a surviving legend for what these demarcations are, but I believe yellow is either another notation for mulatto, or it's going to be for yellow. See, in this column here, you can see that's a B, that's a W, but right here, that is a Y. And I'm thinking that's supposed to be either yellow, or it may be another indication for mulatto, or maybe an indication for Native American, for yellow. Excuse me. In instances where you may have a slave listed, you will see where some entries give you the owner's full name and the slave's first or given name. There are instances where only the owner's name appears, so be careful of that. In the 1870 and 1880, the index notes race by marking an X for African American in the index, and Native Americans are listed as an I or Indian. If there is no notation for a person's race, that person is presumed to be white. Yes, ma'am.
When you mentioned Native American, you said it was indicated by a I or
A Y.
a Y.
I for Indian, or sometimes Y for yellow. But now, and again, I have to say that I have not found a legend for what those markings are supposed to mean. So this is just me guessing. I haven't been able to go back and actually research some of these folks. The few that we had on that first page, they were infants, they were children. And it could have just meant young, but without the government giving us a legend to say, hey, this is what the census taker was supposed to have been writing, I'm just grasping at straws and guessing. That's my best guess. All right, on to grave registrations. I found some sources that defined a grave registration in terms of military personnel specifically. It said that a grave registration was the process of identifying, recording, and burying the remains of deceased military personnel. So here at Archives and History, we have Series 465, which includes some grave registrations from various conflicts such as the Civil War, Korea, World Wars I and II, and several other conflicts. And those conflicts will be listed somehow within the grave registration card. Now, our catalog description for Series 465 says, correspondence reports, cemetery lists, field worksheets, and index cards for the statewide Veterans Grave Registration Project conducted by the Works Progress Administration, sponsored by the American Legion and the Department of Archives and History. County-level workers in this project located and registered the graves of all veterans of all wars interred in Mississippi. All cemeteries in each county were surveyed, and a field worksheet was prepared for each veteran's grave. The county workers then researched local records and newspapers and interviewed relatives to get as complete information as possible on each veteran. The worksheets were forwarded to the State Project Office in Jackson, where workers accessed records at the Department of Archives and History, the State Service Office, which was the predecessor of the Veteran Affairs Commission, and other states and federal agencies to locate the missing information. Once all possible information was gathered, the data was transcribed onto index cards. These cards were later microfilmed. After the WPA project was completed, additional cards were added by the American Legion based on their participation in a veteran's funeral. Many of these items are in the form of an index card like this one from the soldiers from the Indian Wars.
What year was that they did the survey?
In the 30s. Did I try and remember? I apologize, I did not note the year. But if you go to our online catalog and look up Series 465, it'll give you the time period for that. Now, are you looking for the time period that the grave registrations cover, or are you looking for when the project?
Well, both, but that's
Okay.
actually before.
Because now that date is going to fluctuate, because they did cover Civil War, Indian Wars, some territorial wars, but they indexed as many soldier graves as they could find within each cemetery. And of course,
If it was noted on the headstone.
they covered the majority of America's wars with those soldiers because they, like I said, they went through the cemeteries and noted what was on the headstones. Now, some of them were military headstones, most of them were not. But once they began to research who these people were in those particular sections, they began to compile them as
Gotcha.
grave registrations. Mhm. So the information included in these, you should see the person's name, where they were living before they died, the next of kin, when their date of birth, date of death, where they were buried. This person died in July of 44 and wasn't buried until 48. So I'm wondering if he died outside of Mississippi. Matter of fact, there it is, killed in France in battle. So it does give you the branch of service. They give you his rank, when he enlisted. Instead of saying discharge, he was killed in action. The information that was given by this individual here, and whether or not he has a military headstone. Okay, so these cards, these forms and indexes read much like a death certificate, as you can see. They include the person's name, dates of birth and death. It also includes their branch of service, cause of death, and place of residence. And of course, this next one comes from a Confederate soldier who died, who served during the Civil War. Excuse me. Okay, so fair warning. When you venture into these records, the information is subject to instances of missing information as much as the effort that was made to make sure they had all that they could. However, as a genealogist, this is, of course, our Achilles heel, depending upon the information collected by others, and they don't always leave or know the information that we want or need. Series 465 is largely digitized, and I believe it is one that you can access from your home computer. The reason I say this is because some of our digital archives you can only access once you're here using a computer under one of our IP addresses, but there's a good portion of our digital archives that you can get to from your home computer, and this is one of those instances. The way you get to it, if you go to our online catalog, you'll go to the digital archives, click on browse, look for M and find military grave registrations under that alphabetical list, and then find the conflict in which you think your ancestor may have fought in to see if their name is included. Now, unfortunately, this collection is not term searchable. However, I do believe the original hard copy items are available to pull for viewing. Last time I checked, these grave registrations were not restricted to where you cannot pull the actual originals. So if you're home looking through the digital side and you're having a difficult time finding anything, and you know your relative served in one of those conflicts, you can always come here, have someone pull a box or two from Series 465, and you can look through the physical cards themselves.
Is this like a continual effort, or was only done for a certain period?
It was only done during the time of the WPA.
Oh,
Mm-hmm. It'd be nice if they had continued it, but I don't think the American Legion was still doing that project. Now, we do have along these same lines, Ancestry has a collection of military headstone application cards. And this is probably why they did not continue with that grave registration effort, because now we have access to a database of military headstone applications. So this will also give you dates of death, branches of service, place of burial, and the name of a person who requested the headstone, which is usually a family member. These usually have two cards with them. So when you're looking at Ancestry, and if you pull one up, look for that arrow that's on your left or right-hand side to click it to see if there's a second page listed with that application card. Again, they usually have 2 cards with them. I had to include these because they have come in very handy at times during my journey to uncover next of kin, dates of birth and or death, and to confirm whether or not someone actually served in the military. This is the only slide I'm going to include for the cemetery indexes we have. Now, cemetery indexes are way too subjective. They were created by grassroots efforts, private citizens as a hobby, some kind of organization like a local historical or genealogical society. Maybe some of them were even created by a friends of kind of group. And none of them adhere to a standard of how to record it. Some of the cemetery indexes we have in our holdings do not have like a bibliography or an index. They went through the cemetery, they started looking at the information on the headstones, and they just made a list. It's not alphabetized. They did not arrange it. They did not alphabetize it. Some you will have, they went by the layout of the cemetery, how they list their indexes. Some of them are done very well. They are indexed to where you can go to the back and find someone's name and then pop through the pages where you don't have to read every page. So they are very, very subjective. I will admit they are kind of handy because if you don't know when someone died, hopefully the cemetery in which they're buried in was indexed and you can find their name listed there. They are rarely, if ever, updated. I haven't seen one updated in a long time. I will say they were often thorough with the information they collected, but they rarely include every cemetery within the county in which they covered. Some of the indexes in our collection focus on the county level, some on a particular municipality, and others on an individual cemetery. Again, they did not adhere to any type of standard operation. And I don't recall there being a statewide cemetery index that also includes interments. We do have a statewide listing of names of cemeteries and locations of some cemeteries. That also has not been updated in a long time. But those cemetery listings do not list those who are buried within each of those cemeteries. The information found in these indexes are largely collected from the funerary markers and the headstones found within the cemetery. They are, every now and then you'll see where the author mentions collecting data from a sexton's report, but that is somewhat rare for our holdings. The date range is limited by when the survey was conducted versus the age of the cemetery and accessibility up to the cemetery, and is also limited by race. There are several indexes that black cemeteries were not included. The information included in these should list the person's name, their date of birth and or date of death, and sometimes the inscription of the headstone if there was one. And every now and then you'll see mention of a relative, such as this was the child of, or this was the spouse of, and sometimes military service is also mentioned there. Again, cemetery indexes are helpful if you do not know when someone died and you're looking for that information, if that cemetery was included in one of these indexes. Yes, ma'am.
You mentioned the Sexton report?
Sexton's report.
I'm not familiar, I'm sorry.
A sexton is someone who is tasked with caring for a cemetery.
Okay.
And oftentimes, like Greenwood Cemetery here in Jackson, they have a caretaker. That person would be considered a sexton.
Okay.
And they often have a ledger of who's buried where.
Can you spell it for me?
Sexton.
Okay, just want to make sure I have it right.
Yes, ma'am. Okay. We do have a collection of funeral home records. We have several volumes of funeral home records, and they're not very comprehensive. They are in book form, located in our library. These items are very limited when you consider the number of funeral homes that are here currently and the number that have existed within the state throughout our history. They are not very comprehensive, as they are limited to those who the particular funeral home served and the local area where the funeral home was located. They are also limited in their dating and have not been updated in a very long time. So keep in mind that the funeral homes are private businesses, and as such, they are not mandated to turn their records over to the state archives. So while we are very thankful for the few records that we have, and if you all know anybody in the industry, tell them we would love to partner with them to collect more. Again, it's just another death record that could be used for genealogical purposes. The information included in these records, especially early on, was not very genealogically focused. We have the deceased person's name, their date of death, most times their cause of death, but no next of kin or where they were buried. And I apologize, I know this one is kind of blurry, but I had to try to blow it up a bit. You got the deceased person's name, their date of death, the doctor in which they performed, I guess, the autopsy on them or prepared them for death. Then you have the coffin that they were sold, or something that none of us really care about now. So these early on funeral home records were not very genealogically forward, genealogically friendly. This is an image from the Hartford Henderson Funeral Home. It's more of what we hope to find in a funeral home record. This funeral home was located in Lincoln County. They give you a death certificate style information card. So we have the deceased person's name, their date of birth, their date of death, their spouse and parents' names, and even where that person was buried. All of which is what you are looking for while doing genealogy. So if you have hit a roadblock and traditional means have not provided the information you're seeking, then try a funeral home record search. Even if this archive or any other repository does not have the information from this funeral home you're interested in, you can visit or contact them and ask if they are willing to share just the genealogical information from their records. Now, we have tried to partner with funeral homes in times past. There were only a couple that we contacted that returned contact with us. And I get the sense they are very guarded as far as their records, and we had to tell them, I couldn't tell you how many times I had to tell them, we're not interested in how you embalm somebody, how much you charge, where you get your supplies from. We just want the genealogical information from your record. You don't even have to give us the entire thing. Just give us, the rule of 72, which comes from the census record, that they release records every 72 years. That's due to the lifespan expectancy. We ask just if you adhere to the rule of 72, give us records that are 72 years and older, that would help with what we do. They still don't want to get off anything. I mean, I get it. It's a private industry. You're trying to protect whatever, your business and whatnot, and that's fine. But for what we're doing, for what we're looking for, we're just looking for the information to help people find their relatives. Online resources. Now we have, there are a couple of helpful online death records. Now findagrave.com is one, the Social Security Death Index, and then the Burroughs records, and we'll get to that one in a minute. These are my honorable mentions because of the lack of information they provide. However, as I stated before, we genealogists, we have to take whatever we can dig up. Find a grave is searchable. You just have to add the information that they're asking for in their search engine, and it covers most of the United States. Now, the only gripe I have against Find a Grave is actually their strongest feature, and that is that anyone can upload information to their site. Now, I cannot say if or how the information submitted to them is vetted, but when you're looking for a needle, it's always good to have a haystack to look in. So Find a Grave is searchable. Just add the information requested, and that could have did that a little more sharper. They ask for the person's first, middle, and last name, the year which they were born, the year in which they died, and the cemetery location, whether you know just a county, a city, or even a state in which the cemetery is located. You know, put in what information you know. Generally, this is the kind of return you'll get. You'll get the person's name, their date of birth, their date of death, where they are buried, and the memorial number is a number that refers to Find a Grave only. It's not a number that you can take to the cemetery and say, I'm looking for this particular grave, because it has nothing to do with that particular cemetery. That's a number, just a digital number for Find a Grave itself.
Sometimes they actually have obituary.
Yes, ma'am. And again, whoever uploaded the information, they include whatever they may have gotten. Like for this gentleman, they took a picture of his headstone. So whoever went through this St. James Cemetery in Bolivar County probably took photos of all of the headstones and noted the information, and then went home and uploaded it. Fun thing about Find a Grave, the gentleman who started the site, he was interested in finding the graves of some famous folks. And as he traveled around the country, he and his children were, started to note where they had been. And he thought it would be fun to start uploading the information and keeping track of it. Well, from his cute little hobby, we now have several hundreds of thousands of people's entries. So now people who are looking for relatives can now actually find them through Find a Grave. But again, anybody can upload information to Find a Grave. You've done it too?
I've uploaded my grandmother's gravesite and the information into Find a Grave.
Okay. Well,
So, yeah.
this gentleman here is actually my grandfather,
Okay.
but I did not load that. No, I actually did not. I have not uploaded any information to Find a Grave. But again, for someone who's looking for a needle in a haystack, this is a very good place to start looking. Now, we also have the Social Security Death Index. Social Security comes into play around 1935 with the U.S. Social Security Act. However, the Death Index didn't officially begin until 1962, but includes information as far back as 1937. Ancestry dates their SSDI information from 35 to 2014, or somewhere in that area. Generally, one would access this database from Ancestry.com or FamilySearch.com. However, you can submit a request to the Social Security Administration through their data exchange. I would have included information from the Social Security Administration, but their website is not user-friendly whatsoever, especially for us genealogists just trying to find something. That form to submit to them for information from the death index is so deeply buried in that website, I can't even tell you how I got to it. So if you feel froggy, you can jump into their website and try to find it. But I would suggest trying Ancestry or the Social Security Death Index online first. So when you search for a relative who would have had a Social Security number or received benefits before their death, this is kind of what you can expect in their file. You've got their name, dates of birth and death, the year their Social Security number was issued, the last date a Social Security benefit was paid out, and the last residence of entry as well. Their Social Security number may not be very useful to most records outside of SSA, because outside of the Social Security Administration, nobody records a person's Social Security number or keeps records by that number. It's good to have just in case, just to have it, just to understand, but it really does not help you in doing your genealogy. There's no other record tied to that Social Security number outside of the Social Security Administration. I mentioned something interesting I found was the BIRLS, BIRLS, and excuse me, this is a potentially helpful resource that I just ran across in Ancestry, which I could have mentioned during the military grave registration portion, but I'm less familiar with these. That's why I put it in our honorable mention section. BIRLS stands for Beneficiary Identification Records Locator System. This system is kind of a cross between the military grave registration and the Social Security Death Index. It is focused strictly on deceased members of the military, created by the federal government and used to track individuals who received benefits from the Veterans Affairs Administration. So this record is not for everyone in your family tree, just those who were in the military and specifically those who received benefits from the VA. But there again, when you're looking for a lead, we take whatever we can get, right? So it includes some very helpful information such as their names, dates of birth and death, gender, cause of death, branch of service, dates of enlistment and discharge. Now, unfortunately, there is really no next of kin or spousal information listed, which that would be even more helpful to us. And this is what a typical BIRLS record looks like. Again, the person's name, their gender, their date of birth, date of death, their Social Security number, the branch of enlistment, the dates they enlisted, and was discharged. Okay, so remember earlier I mentioned that we had some municipalities who started around 1879 with their local branches of health departments. Well, this would be a record that survived from that effort. So as we wind this thing down, I want to bring to your attention Series 2051, which is our government record series for municipal records. There are several municipalities that are included in this series of records, and unfortunately, this does not include every municipality from across the state. Each municipality included has a varied number of record types, and some even include birth and death registries. They do not all have the same types of records, nor do they all cover the same date range. But again, this is another source while searching for death records that we have here at MDAH that could be helpful to you. Oh, did I go too fast? Yeah, I did. So you see they give you the person's name here. I think this is where they were living in the city itself. They give you the date. This looks like the state hospital, because I didn't realize they gave you admission date. And then this person died, and they were buried in the pauper's grave. So you may not find your relative because they died at a time that no one was alive to give information for it. So you can check the municipal records and see, first of all, see if the municipality in which they were living has a set of records under that series, and then whether or not you can find their name in there. So unfortunately, there really isn't much information listed within the examples of these municipality records. Every one of them styled their records a little bit different, but you should expect at the very least the person's name, date of birth and or death, cause of death, and hopefully a next of kin. Some of them have them, some of them do not. My final honorable mention, and these are the old favorites that everybody try to look for, would be the county will and probate records. Now, both have been used as a death record because they're not executed until after a person's death. They often contain names of relatives, usually those who have survived them, such as a spouse or children. These records, while helpful, are spotty because there was no guarantee that the deceased person made out a will or that the will was probated after their death. And it could have been probated years after their death. For a will record is not an automatic thing for it to be probated right after the person's death. Oftentimes you'll hear that they didn't find it until years later when they were cleaning stuff out. And you can't imagine the number of people who have died that probably didn't have a will record that was left behind. And a will record a probate record can only be created after the person's death once the will has been brought to the courthouse.
So where did you locate those?
These would be on microfilm in our media room. They are cataloged under each individual county, and then you'll look for the will records. We should have indexes where you can search by name. Those indexes will be broken down by year. Once you locate the person's name, it'll give you a book or page or volume and page number where the actual record can be found.
As current as
Depends on the county.
Hines.
Couldn't tell you because both. No, seriously. So every county is going to be different depending on when the county was formed, whether or not it has 2 county seats, whether or not there was a loss of records for that county. So the date ranges are going to fluctuate. I will say Hines and Adams County are probably the 2 that compete for the most records we have on microfilm.
Okay.
But the date ranges are going to be all over the place. And the date ranges will also differ from deed records to marriage records to...
But as current as 10 years?
No.
That's what I'm saying. What's the current? 50?
It varies.
It varies. That's why it's really hard for me to
Okay.
say. And again, we have information from just about all 82 counties. I think there's one county, maybe Tunica or somewhere, we don't have something from. But the ranges the date ranges are all over the place. You can go onto our online catalog to see those. When you go to our online catalog, there's a section of hyperlinks on the right-hand side. If you come down the middle section, about almost to the bottom, you'll see a blue section that says County Records on Microfilm.
Okay.
That will give you an alphabetical list of all 82 counties. Once you click on the county, it'll give you an alphabetical list of all of the record types that we have. When you go in under any one of those record types, then it will list the date ranges for you. And again, I apologize for not being able to really answer.
I mean, as far as how, can you find something from the 30s?
Well,
I would say so. I think somewhere in the 50s, 60s,
Okay.
maybe. But don't quote me on that. I'm
Okay, that's
spinning here.
I've been able to find a lot of the wills and probate records from Marshall County, which is in North Mississippi, on Family Search, and that's been 100% free.
Okay.
And
Yes.
it's all been
really?
scanned and indexed, and at least for us, it's gone to up to about 1935.
Okay.
To kind of give you some
That's actually in my
idea.
years that I'm looking, yeah.
Yeah.
But thank you for mentioning that. Family Search is run by the Mormon Church.
Yes.
They have come through archives and history several times. A lot of times we get a couple that comes in during the summer, and they'll tuck away into a little closet, and they will microfilm and digitize some of everything we have. As a matter of fact, there was a couple that came in 3-4 years ago, I think, that was on our second floor that did that. So that's where they were getting some of the records from. They have also partnered with some of the counties to where they've gone in and filmed some of their books as well, and they have given us some of those rolls of microfilm. Even for Family Search, I'm not sure if they come into the 2000s yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
But again, every county is going to fluctuate with their dating due to loss of record, when it was established, so on and so forth.
Is it free for them to do that when they come in here to do stuff like that?
Free-ish. Well, I say that because there's no monetary exchange for them coming in, but we allow them to come in and do that filming as long as they allow us the benefit of getting access to the records. So if they digitize it, we get a digital copy. If they come in and film it for microfilm, we sometimes get a copy of the roll of microfilm, because we here at Archives, we don't have a microfilming section anymore. That they did away with that a long time ago. But when other places come in with equipment and money, and we can partner with them, as far as our contract with them, they have to give us access, like newspapers.com. Oh, we want all the whatever newspapers you can give us. Okay, fine, come on. But you're gonna have to give us access.
Right.
So that's why we have a free entry point to newspapers.com. The caveat to newspapers.com is that we only have access to whatever they got from us. So if you're on newspaper, yes. So, and actually they filmed a lot from us, but they didn't film everything we had. So if you come in and you go to our media room and you're on newspapers.com and you've put in something and an article pops up, but they won't let you read it, they'll give you that little blurb about you need to have an account or whatever. Note the newspaper and where the date and the page number and all that. Go to the microfilm, because that's just where they ended. They just, like for instance, and this one I know because a couple of months ago I found this out the hard way. The Hattiesburg American. They only filmed Hattiesburg American up to the early 30s from our holdings. So when we go in looking for someone in the 40s, they give you that blurb. You can see the little thumbnail that's blurred out, but when you click on it to read it, it's like, oh, you need an account. No. Exactly. Go to the newspapers on microfilm in our holdings, because they just didn't get that far within it. So a lot of newspapers we have on in our holdings. If you can't find it online, come here and look at what we have on microfilm. And again, we have digital scanners in the media room that if it's not clear, if it looks really muddy, we can manipulate those things to clear that up. All right. This is another image of another probate record. And again, these records are only, you can only find them if they send them to the courthouse after the time of death. All right. Pulling into the stall here. These death records are the final bookend of a person's life, and we hope to use it to trace our genealogy further back. So when we find these records, we hope to find names of parents and siblings and spouses and even children. Every little breadcrumb of information that can lead us to an open genealogical door. So when I'm working on someone's request, the first thing I want to know is when they were born and when they died. Next, do you have a record of either of these events, and what information have you gathered from these records? The information from death records can be frustrating when it's limited, lacking, or incomplete, but they can be a treasure if it contains a new lead that clarifies something for you. So I want to thank you all for visiting us today, and I hope the information presented was helpful and useful. And I invite you to come visit us here at the Archives, where we look forward to helping you with your genealogical journey. And God bless you all for listening to me ramble on here today.